we were discussing on the last pod. Uh, you had mentioned to Daryl and then reiterated in the last pod that the Sixers have the most pressure on them in pro sports to make a playoff run.
It is my opinion that your Philadelphia 76ers have the most pressure of any team in sports to make a run this year.
All sports.
I
Wow.
believe so. For a team that has
Cowboys. Like, I'm trying to think of the teams.
I'd say pressure and also expectations.
Okay.
I think they just, this, we've discussed this.
Next.
The best team that the Sixers have advanced past in the playoffs is last year's Miami Heat in a one-game play-in because Nick Batum got incredibly hot and made a great play at the end of the game. It has to happen this year. Paul George came. Embiid is healthy, still playing at MVP level. Maxey just got maxed. Do you feel the pressure of that? And if you don't, I'm bringing it to you.
He wants to put the pressure on.
It has to happen this year or next year before those two guys get older and potentially more injured, et cetera. Obviously, hoping we don't. But this year, next year.
Yeah, the pressure is massive. Obviously, that's why we embarked down this path.
And we're bouncing around that. And we got a thoughtful email from Ryan, who came up with a list. I'm going to propose the team to you, and you tell me Sixers more or less pressure than them.
Okay.
Ryan says,
keep in mind, hockey doesn't count for me as someone who doesn't know anything about it.
Okay. Well, I got to bring it up because he does have it on there. But Ryan says, here's a ranking of a few teams that I think have the most pressure to win in sports. Let me know if I missed any, but I don't think there are that many with that much pressure to win in the NBA and Major League Baseball. To be clear, he did not mention the Bills or the Ravens, and I think the Ravens is less about the Ravens and more about Lamar Jackson, so I would not put the Ravens as an organization pressure-wise. I do think there's still a lot of pressure on the Bills, even though they probably will not have the same preseason expectations that they normally have.
And the Ravens at least won a Super Bowl like 12 years ago and have been to the conference championship many times in the last 15 years.
Yep. So number one, and I know you said hockey doesn't count, but he does give good context, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I know the Canadian stuff that they haven't won.
Yes.
They haven't won in forever, so I will submit to someone else's logic on that point.
Yeah, he says biggest city in Canada, and they play the country's main sport. Haven't won since 1967. No Canadian team has won since 1993, which is very embarrassing for Canada, to be quite honest. Have made the playoffs every year since 2017 and have a stacked team with a top star, can hardly make the second round, let alone a conference championship, have lost repeatedly in embarrassing fashion. Their team is going to be hard to keep together over the next few years. So I would agree. He has the Sixers as number 2.
Okay.
Number 3, the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Every year they're a preseason media favorite, and every year they disappoint. They have a national fan base, and yet most of their fans have not been alive long enough to see them win. They've constructed talented teams with 2 different quarterbacks over almost 3 decades and still come up short.
Yes, I agree with that. And we mentioned Dallas as when we talked about this originally. It's just football is so much more random in one game, winner take all type of situations that so many things can go wrong and you go like, oh, you got unlucky. For the Sixers in the NBA, when almost always the better team does win in the playoffs over the course of a 5-7 game series.
Yeah.
It is unheard of for the Sixers to have not advanced past the second round in that much time with a player as good as of an MVP candidate as Joel.
Yes, I would agree.
So I think football just inherently has a little bit more like bad bounces kind of thing than the NBA does.
Well, I also think the Cowboys thing has gone on so long that it's almost just sort of like a joke now, in that I wouldn't say the Sixers aren't a laughing stock, but I almost think this era of Sixers seems to be separate from every other era, whereas the Cowboys stuff seems to be all connected. Does that make sense? Like, I think that the Cowboys era, the Cowboys pressure is like 30 years long, where I know it's been 40 years since the Sixers won a title, but it feels like this 11 years is a separate thing.
For sure. Just since it really is since the process, the stakes of this, like, at the time, and how it's talked about, this grand experiment, which is now just sort of how every team does it.
Yep.
In the NBA. And like the Sixers did it in a pretty bland way, honestly. But because of the furor around it on the pro and con side, I think it was like it's become, and Joel being the face of it and changing his nickname to the process, like that it is an indictment on it if it doesn't work, and a whole everything comes down to it. If for Joel, for the process, for us, like if they don't succeed, it will be like condemned as a failure.
The next one, who I actually had not thought of the next one, but it's interesting. 49ers, they have not won since 1995. Their fans and team talks a lot of smack, but keeps choking leads in the Super Bowl. They have a talented team, but as soon as Purdy gets paid, it'll be hard to keep them all together.
Niners close, but also made the conference championship.
Yeah, so you defined as pressure to make a run, whereas the 49ers, it is pressure to win a championship.
Right.
I think the same with the Maple Leafs. So Cowboys, I think you could put in the same category, as they have not made a, quote, run.
Right. 49ers the Niners have been to the conference championship in 4 out of the last 5 years, to the Super Bowl in 2 of those years. Like, they have to get over that hump, but that hump is at least more respectable than the lesser hump that the Sixers have not been able to pass.
Which, by the way, is defined as not even beating one good team in the playoffs.
Not even being a single good team in the playoffs.
Not one.
The closest one, again, is a 1-game playoff against the Miami Heat where Nick Batum went off.
Yeah. And by the way, that Miami Heat team was the 8 seed and got lost in the first round. Number 5, the Oilers. They have a player in the GOAT conversation, another 5 to 10 current player. Those 2 players are also approaching free agency, but they just made the finals. So not on pressure to make a run. Pressure to win a championship, maybe. Great jerseys, by the way. Also Maple Leafs, great jerseys. Number 6, the Knicks. I sort of agree here. It's been a very long time since they made a run. By the way, longer than the Sixers. They haven't made a run since the 90s, the New York Knicks. They have a ton of offseason praise. They're in the biggest market in the country. And they have their payroll is at a sort of a precarious position in that it will be tough they can't really add like big name players. So this sort of is what it is. I think there's been a lot of praise for the Knicks over the last couple of years, but if they don't do anything this year, if they don't get past the second round, I don't know. I think they may be 1 year away from where the Sixers are, but I think there is a lot of pressure on the Knicks, actually.
I think it's way more than 1 year. I mean, the Knicks have at least beaten a good team in the playoffs in the Philadelphia 76ers this past year. So, and the fact that Mikal just came, the feelings are so positive. Like, obviously the Knicks fans wanted to beat the Pacers, and just injuries got to them, and Tibbs playing everyone 47 minutes a night, like, got to them and stuff. But the Sixers never had that like year of good feeling because Embiid got hurt. This is the Embiid and Simmons first year together. Embiid gets hurt. The Sixers win their last 16 games. And then they play the Celtics in the second round, and they lose in 5 games. It was a close 5 games, as we can talk about on this podcast. There were a couple moments that should have gone different ways. And it was definitely like a wake-up call for Joel and him failing against Horford and Baines and stuff. But they immediately lost to the Celtics in 5 games, and the vibe was low.
Yeah.
And we were worried about, on the Covington live pod at Xfinity Live, people booing because of how bad that it went. And so,
by the way, they didn't. We want to give credit to them.
It was great. Yeah. No, it was totally. It was a wonderful night. But we never had that. Okay, we lost in the playoffs, but like now we're a force to be reckoned with type of thing. It was so they got so good so quick, and all of a sudden was like, maybe the year is right now.
Right.
And it didn't happen in sort of a fall flat in your face type of way against the Celtics, that we never had that good feeling moment. So if the Knicks are right there, that the Sixers didn't get to have, even though the cap is high and everything, and they're tied to guys that are not as young as the Sixers were at that point. I still think, considering that was 6-7 years ago for the Sixers, the Knicks have more time to fail than the Sixers have. I think that if the Knicks don't get to the conference finals in the next 2 or 3, in like say 3 years, then you can go like, okay, yeah, this has been, the pressure's on. This has been a failure on what was expected. But I think the Sixers are so far past that, that nobody in the Knicks is talking about like if they lose, like we're trading Brunson kind of thing, which has obviously been talked about.
That's a good point.
Embiid for a long time.
And number 7's the Mets, which is a good one. They have spent a lot of money. They have an owner who spends a lot of money. They are in a big city. Their fans are very agitated and very Sixers-like. I would say, having lived in or worked in New York for almost 3 years, Mets fans and Jets fans are more similar to Philadelphia fans than like, Giants fans and Yankees fans or whatever. Mets fans go from 0 to 60 back to 0 very quickly, like Philadelphia, though I just don't think nationally anyone cares about whether the Mets make a run or not. So I think the Mets could be on the list, but I don't think they're even close to the Sixers, to be honest with you.
I mean, they did get to a World Series within the last 10 years. As far as a recently historically feudal franchise in a pretty fun way for Phillies fans.
Be careful.
I mean, I'm sure the Knicks fans have enjoyed the Sixers' futility quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
So I do. I feel a kinship with Sixers and Mets together, but I do think that because the Mets have just like failed in spectacular ways, and have not gotten, the fact that the Sixers have gotten to the same place each time. It's like it feels Sisyphean,
I think,
to like continue to do every offseason and be like, is it this one? We get to the first or second round against a decent team and they get them a little bit and then they got it. And it's like every year we do the same thing. And now it's like, okay, finally, Daryl has Tobias off the books. He's got a young budding superstar in Tyrese Maxey. Embiid is playing in the Olympics. Paul George walked into the cap space. Daryl has picks to trade. He got a bunch of Rockets. Eric Gordon is finally here. Kyle Lowry is still here. Like, it's like, this is all happening. And for the process, and for Daryl, and for Joel, and for us, and for Paul George, who we obviously are not very close with at the moment, but maybe as we spend more time together with him and develop some traumas with him, maybe that becomes his previous failures become something that we also internalize. It's just all of it is building to, it has to happen this year or next year. It has to happen. And if they don't win a championship, that's one thing. But if they don't even make actual legitimate noise beyond, I think they would have beaten the Raptors in overtime if that Kawhi shot didn't go in. If that's as close as we get, then man, this will have been such a waste of time.
Yeah. I mean, it won't be great. It won't be a great result.
And I just feel like you can't say that about any other team. The hockey teams, I don't know, obviously, but like, I don't think you can say that about any other team. Maybe like Dak and Dallas.
Yeah, I think. But like, they've had a lot of talent there.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. But they've at least. Yeah, I think Dallas is there, but I would just put the edge on football is weird, has weirder bounces consistently. Obviously, the Sixers have been victims to a couple bizarre bounces themselves, but overall, the Sixers have not been unlucky on court in why they didn't make a run. They just have not. Obviously, they have been in some ways unlucky on the court, but also the reason why they have failed is because of their own failures. Like, they have failed because they weren't good enough. They have failed because like guys didn't deliver, bad coaching or personnel decisions. Embiid playing at a way worse level in the playoffs than he has in every regular season, partially because of injury, like all that stuff. So I think Dallas the Cowboys have gotten some weird moments, and obviously like Zeke Elliott playing center in the last play of the season was a great one. But like, I just feel like basketball, the better team almost always wins, and the Sixers have never been the better team. and
that's
is crazy
pretty depressing.
after all this time.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Now that you say it like that.
Yeah.